As a normal person, many thoughts we think. As I think some questions. So I question the AI because it's the easiest way to questioning. So the questions is who is mad and how can anyone define who is mad or not? Who is criminal and how can anyone declare he or she is criminal? First answer, who is mad? The honest answer is nobody agrees and the definition keeps changing. The historical shift. For most human history, madness was defined by whoever held power. In medieval Europe, hearing voice meant you were either a saint or possessed by demons. The same behavior meant opposite things depending on who was judging you. In Soviet Russia, political dissidents were officially diagnosed, diagnosed with plagues, schizophrenia, or diagnosis invented specifically to psychology disagreement with the state. It uses psych- psychiatry as a weapon. This is not this is not Asian history. Until 1973, homosexuality was listed in the DSM, the official manual of mental disorder in America, as a mental illness. A vote by the American Psychiatrists Association removed. A democratic vote changed. Who was mad? That should make you think carefully about what does what this rebel really are. What the DSM actually does. A diagnosis statistical manual. A diagnosis statistical manual. The Bible of psychiatry does not discover mental illness that the way a physicists discover a particle. It constructs categories by committee. Experts debate, vote, and negotiate. Thomas says a psychiatrist who spent in his career challenging this argued the myth of mental illness. 1961. The most psychiatric diagnos- diagnoses are not disease in biological sense. They are judgment about behavior based in medical language. Does not mean suffering is not real. Depression is a real suffering. Schizophrenia is a real suffering, but the label who qualifies where the boundary is a social construction, not a natural fact discovered in a laboratory. The three framework that compete. The medical models says madness is a brain disease, chemical imbalance, genetic factors, neurological dysfunction. Treat it like a diabetes. This gives people relief from shame, but remove agency and can oversimplify mostly complex human experience. The social model says what we call madness is often the rational response to an irrational world. Adil Laying argued that schizophrenia was something a sane response to an insane family system. From a researcher like Basil van der Kolk shows the most mental illness is actually the body and mind adapting to unbearable circumstances. The disorder is in the environment, not the person. The statistical model says madness is a simply deviation from the norm, behaving in ways most people don't, but it makes normal the standard, which is philosophical weak. Galileo was abnormal. Einstein was abnormal. Deviation from the majority has never been reliable guide to the truth of health. The power question nobody wants to ask. Who has the authority to declare someone mad? Historically, doctor, priests, governments, and families. In every case, the person being labeled has less power than the person doing labeling. Michael Foucault's Madness and Civilization, 1961, traces how psychiatric instruction emerged not primarily to heal, but to remove from society those who did not feel, the poor, the eccentric, the inconvenient. This is not conspiracy thinking, it is documented history. Second question, who is criminal? The obvious answer, why it's insufficient. A criminal is someone who breaks the law. But this immediately raises the question, whose law? Made by whom? Enforced on whom? Slavery was legal, helping escape slaves was criminal. Ap- ap- Apartheid was law. Resisting is it was crime. The Holocaust was administered through a perfectly legal bureaucratic process. The people who sheltered Jewish families were criminals under the legal system. If criminal simply means lawbreaker, then the most morally admirable people in history were criminals. The law cannot be its own justification. The three theories of what makes something a crime. Harm principle, John Stuart Mill, 1859. The only legitimate basis for criminalizing behavior is that it harms others. Your freedom ends where mine begins. By the logic, victims' crimes, drug use, certain consensual acts, jaywalking should not be crimes at all. Most modern libel legal system claim to follow this but violate it constantly. Legal moralism. Some things should be crimes because they are morally wrong, regardless direct harm. This is how laws against blasphemy, homosexuality, and apostasy have been justified throughout history. It requires agreeing on whose mortality count, mortality, morality counts, which is exactly what pluralistic societies cannot do. Social contact theory. Rousseau, Hobbes, and Locke. We agree collectively on rule that makes society possible. Crime is violation of the agreement. The problem most people never explicitly agreed to anything, and the contract was historically written by the powerful to protect their interest. The enforcement gap, the most important insight. Criminology research constantly shows the crime is not equally prosecuted or punished. A poor person who steals food is more likely to be called a criminal than a wealthy executive who commits fund affecting thousands. White collar crime causes the more brutal harm by almost measure. More financial damage. more deaths throughout regulatory violations, more social destruction, but result in far fewer prison sentences. Against Sutherland coined white collar crime. In 1939, specifically to challenge the assumption that criminals look like a certain kind of person. The criminal justice system does not neutrally detect wrongdoing. It reflects the power structure of the society that built it. The redivision problem. If the criminal justice system could reliably identify criminals as a stable category of people, rehabilitation would not be needed. You had just removed them permanently. Most people who commit crimes don't commit them again, especially with proper support. And most people who never committed a crime are capable of committing one under sufficient stress, deprivation, and circumstances. Research in situational criminology. Zimbabwe work through controversial and more rigorously the work of Lawrence Herman suggests the crime is more function of situation than character. Put ordinary people in desperate enough situation, the crime rates rise. The suggests that the crime is more function of situation than character. Put ordinary people in desperate enough situation, the crime rates rise. This demolishes the idea of the criminal as a fundamentally different kind of person. A deep connection between the two questions. Here's the what ties mad and criminal together. Both are labels the society is attached to people to justify doing something to them, Institu- institutionalizing them, impros- imprisoning them, removing their rights, excluding them from full humanity. Both labels require an authority to apply them. Both have historically been applied disproportionately to the poor, the different, the politically inconvenient, and the powerless. Both are as objective scientific legal determinism, but both are now thought through with cultural assumption, power dynamics, and historical contingents. This doesn't mean no one suffers from mental illness or that no behavior should be prohibited. It means we should hold these labels with humanity, skepticism, and constant awareness of who benefits from applying them and to whom they are applied. The question was sitting with the definition keep changing. If the enforcement is unequal, if the same behavior is rebel, mad, or criminal in one era and normal in another, then what are we actually doing when we call someone mad or criminal? Are we distinguishing the or are we managing them? This distinction matters in normal for justice, for compassion, and for how to how we build societies worth living in. What angles of the interest you most? philosophical, the legal, the psychological, or something more personal? Okay, this is the answer of my question, my thinking. Who is mad? And how can anyone define who is mad or not? Who is criminal? How can anyone declare he is criminal?